Hello, this is Bernie Burns, and I am the writer of Red vs. Blue Recreation.
Hello, this is Gavin Free, and I'm the director of Red vs. Blue Recreation.
Now, I was hoping you would say it differently since you're British and you would say recreation.
I say it the same way. So this is the middle part of a trilogy, right?
This is the middle story of a 3-part trilogy as opposed to, say, like a 4-part trilogy.
I heard those are the worst kinds of trilogies.
They are. They're always too long, and the 2-part trilogies always leave you wanting more.
Yeah.
But Recreation, or Recreation, is the middle story between Reconstruction and what now is tentatively titled Red vs. Blue Resolution. And
You'll have to stick to that now.
I guess so. Maybe not. Well, or this will become a collector's item when we call it, like, Red vs. Blue Redonkadonk or something like that.
We had a discussion about what we were going to name all these, didn't we? And it eventually came down to the fact that, name it whatever.
No. This one, what do you mean, name it whatever? When did we ever have the discussion where we said, well, name it whatever, who cares? But yeah, we went through a bunch of different names. Do you remember some of the names that we went through?
I don't specifically. There was like reinstalled and stuff like that, wasn't there?
There was Red vs. Blue Redundant, we talked about, because there was essentially a backup copy of Church, but we thought that had a negative name to it and would make the story seem like it wasn't as important.
Yeah.
And then there was, I think one of the last candidates was Red vs. Blue Revenant, which is a word, I believe it's a French word, that means a ghost that you can't get rid of. And that,
Really?
yeah, that it keeps coming back, or something that comes back from the dead after a long period of time of being away. And it's very appropriate.
Yeah,
but
why didn't you use that one?
I just don't know if the internet
I guess the audience
yeah, they want to go on the internet and look up words, But and the other thing too was that we didn't want to do anything that seemed too serious, because Reconstruction kind of had. Reconstruction is one of my favorite things we've ever worked on, and it had people keep coming back to it saying, "Well, it's more serious. It's more serious," even though Reconstruction has a ton of comedic moments in it. So, Recreation or Recreation was supposed to be something that was a little more lighthearted.
Right, it was a good opportunity to just have some standing around jokes, just like the original Blood Gulch Chronicles, right?
Right, exactly. And so the idea was that, Recreation has a double meaning, a lot like Reconstruction does, where it can either mean fun, like recreation, or it can actually be recreation in this case, where they're recreating Church.
Yeah, I like it.
Which is really the story here. Then, if I'm assuming you've watched the movie before listening to the commentary, but there's also a kind of a recreation of one of the characters as a villain, which takes place throughout this entire storyline.
Yep.
And then from a writing perspective, that was the main goal for Recreation, was to get to the point where we have Church back, albeit in a new form entirely, and as Epsilon, and then also to establish Washington as now a villain.
Right. And he is Epsilon, he's not original Church. That's right.
Right. Gavin really, we have a lot of discussions, Gavin and I do, about storyline and things like that. And there's some things he wants to be very specific, and as a writer, sometimes there's things that I want to leave open because, as the story evolves, like things I want to do with Church are affected by things I want to do with, say, Sarge or Caboose. So I don't necessarily want to lock in, but in the case of this series, the Tex and Church story is definitely the driving force behind it.
Right.
And this is the first few episodes were directed by me, and this was before you came over.
Yeah, I did the occasional shot from the UK in the early episodes, and then I took over full director chair in episode 6.
And you also did all the direction for the miniseries, which was Relocated.
Right, which is on this DVD.
Yep.
And that's a good point, actually. If you're wondering why some things have drastically changed between Reconstruction and Recreation, chances are it was told in Relocated, the miniseries.
And you said,
for example, why they have a holographic projection room under the base now.
Right, exactly. Where did that thing come from?
Because if you just watch this without seeing Relocated, it'd be like, where the hell are they now? Under the base.
And that's what we do when we write out the series. We essentially have a couple of plot points that we want to hit. And, when I say a couple of plot points, I mean major milestones in the storyline or development of the characters. And then we try to get a little closer to those milestones every week, and then just write the comedic shorts based around it's essentially a sitcom. So around the situation of where they are currently in the storyline.
Yep.
But with the goal of moving them towards that. And so when we sat down for the Relocated writing sessions, we actually did, remember the whole read-through and everything that we did?
It was very professional.
We had a big long discussion of what do we want to do. I went to Gavin. I said, okay, you're the first director for Red versus Blue that isn't me, so I don't really know how to approach this. So what are some ideas for some things you want to do, and then I'll try to tailor a script around that.
Yeah, and the main thing you said behind Relocated was less plot, more stupid, right?
For Relocated, yeah. Just a lot of dumb, and in fact,
a whole lot of dumb.
And that was definitely a reaction to Reconstruction, which was so heavy, plot driven, very very serial. And here's actually a scene from Reconstruction.
Yep.
It's a flashback to the end of like the last few episodes of Reconstruction when they're on standoff. And
not the most accurate of flashbacks, I've got to say.
Why do you say that?
Because Simmons just turned into a motorcycle.
You know, it's funny because Gavin. It's interesting to have somebody else who's you've watched Red versus Blue. Gavin actually comes from the community of Red versus Blue viewers. And there's Jenkins. And you've been watching since episode what?
I signed up on your website on episode 5.
Episode 5?
So that's back in mid 2003, I guess.
No, that'd been like May of 2003. Yeah, probably somewhere around there.
Yeah.
Then there was a big fight. My team got in trouble, so I talked to Zeg. She was.
I've gotten to know Gav over the years, and so it's kind of interesting to have someone who's here when I'm talking about writing.
I shot this from the UK right now.
That shot right there.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't even tell. Look. You should be on the left side of the screen, right, as opposed to the right side of the screen?
Oh, hang on. No, I didn't shoot that. It was in episode 3. Similar framing, though.
But what I was going to say was, when I'm writing, it's interesting to have someone here to bounce ideas against who you're invested in the storyline.
Right.
And so you'll ask me very specific things. I asked, when you mentioned the flashback, you said not the most accurate of flashbacks. Just the other day, we had a discussion about flashbacks. And we're using Halo 3 now. And you said, well, you're going to go back and use Halo 1 if you write that flashback scene.
Because usually anything from the past is shown in that generation of games, right?
Right.
Excellent work, Private Griff. Wow. Thank you, sir.
No, but you're right. Every time we go back and show things, we have used Halo 1.
Right. There's a moment in Relocated where it flashes back to Sarge and Griff in Halo 1, and then again in Halo 2, and then Halo 3. Just to show passage of time, I guess. But for going back in time to pre-Red versus Blue Blood Gulch Chronicles, but having it in Halo 3, that's a new thing, right? If you were to do that.
Yeah, I guess so. I'll use black and white the way that other people do in other shows.
Sepia filters on it.
Sorry, sir.
And you use the memory that way. We've I think violated that a little bit. When Washington went back in Reconstruction and talked to the guys in Blood Gulch, he had to go back to Halo 2, and that was in present day.
That's right.
But it was more like he's going back to this simulation group. So maybe they're in a simulation part that hasn't been the base hasn't been upgraded.
And you had that line. You had that line where it's like, "Do you still have your old armor?" Because I guess he has to put on his old armor to go to Blood Gulch.
Oh yeah, otherwise he'd send out. It'd be like the guy showing up in America in the jet plane, and nobody's prepared to see that. The Native Americans would be like, "What is this? He's got advanced armor," even though everyone's already picked new armor and left, and Sarge is sticking around in Blood Gulch. But one of the funny things is now you've been producing episode after episode of Red versus Blue, I should say directing episode after episode, and sometimes you'll reach things where you don't remember making it. You'll see it. Are you at that point now?
Oh yeah.
Where you look at something and you're saying, "When do we do this?" Like you can't remember if you shot that one shot of Caboose.
Yeah.
And likewise, you mentioned.
But you're looking at a primary colored character standing in a room that you've been in a lot of times. It's hard to tell. I mean, it's hard to remember whether that was shot by you or not.
Well, yeah, but I mean, there will be written things that I'll see.
Right.
We'll go back and watch season 2.
I guess so.
And I don't remember every single joke from season 2.
So when you remember them again, it's like, wow, I'm pretty funny.
Yeah. The great part about it is it's written by me, so of course I'm gonna find it funny. And so it's the best. It's the best show in the world.
Now that joke there with Simmons and the fake Sarge giving him compliments. That was an idea you came up with in Relocated while we were shooting that, I remember.
Yeah, we actually thought about putting it into Relocated.
Yeah, and I guess you kept it for recreation.
And that was actually, I would say, a trouble spot where we had working together. Because remember, we made the Hollow Room, and then I had to remake the Hollow Room because I wasn't happy with the way the plates came together and the way the characters bumped around.
I'm not the best forger in Halo 3.
No, in fact, I meant if we had more time, I was going to use Knockyard, who's a member of our site, who makes the most incredible Halo 3 maps in Forge. He made the Griffball maps. He's made some other maps, and
Yeah, we should explain for non-Halo 3 players. Forge is where you custom design objects in the map, and you can place weapons and items and scenery.
Halo 3 has two cool things in it that make Red versus Blue a lot higher quality. Machinima in general, a lot higher quality. One is Forge, where you can make your own sets and tailor them exactly how you want. And the other, of course, is Cinema Mode, where you can go in after a game has been recorded and go through and get any kind of angle that you want.
Mm-hmm.
And we were just shooting some action stuff for the end of Red vs. Blue Recreation.
Yeah, it comes in very handy for action.
Very, very.
Because previously you would have had to, like, if you had a Warthog rolling and landing near the camera, you'd have to just do it over and over again until it landed in the right place.
Yep.
And you'd have to also worry about, is the cameraman going to get run over and stuff like that.
Like,
but in theater mode, we know exactly where everything's going to land, and we can just position the camera ahead of time.
right. In fact, this is 2008. I'm a year behind. This is 2009 when we made Recreation, and this was the year when Microsoft and Bungie released Halo 3 ODST, which is currently the latest version of the Halo franchise. And it's based on the Halo 3 engine, the game is, but it's based on the campaign engine and not necessarily the multiplayer engine, which are...
Well, would you say they're different engines?
Well, yeah, they must be. I mean, there's different aspects to them because the cinema mode in Halo 3 ODST does not have a rewind function.
Right.
And
It's the same with the Halo 3 campaign.
Halo 3
You
campaign.
can only take screenshots, you can't take video clips.
Yeah,
You
you can't.
can't rewind.
And rewinding is a big deal.
Right. At no point would I ever line up the camera and then just have the guys and then capture the bobs of the heads the first time. I'd always watch it and then be like, I want to position the camera here, and I'm going to rewind and capture it because you can't just play by ear, really.
Well, why don't you explain then? Why don't you explain from a new
I
perspective?
shot this scene. This was
This one you shot? Is that why Donut's a little off color there?
That's why he doesn't have his stripe as well.
Oh, right. We did a thing with Donut
Because-
this time where we accessorized him.
Yeah, you had a sapphire armor detail on his arm, right? And
Yeah. Well, I figured Donut would be the only guy who would have
Yeah.
an accessory.
Thanks for telling me that, by the way, when I was.
Well, it changes. It depends on Donut's mood. Sometimes he
does,
has
right?
it. Sometimes he doesn't have it, It depends, maybe some days he feels he wants to,
I like how.
feel a little prettier.
I think we should count up the amount of minutes Donut spends on the ground in this season, like flat down on his face.
That is true. The first shot started with the water cans and Donut laying essentially comatose on the ground. And that's a nice bookend for the season because that's the way it starts. And then at the end, spoiler, Donut is then shot and killed. Or is he? He is. Was that hard to get when he fell down there right there?
Well, I just shot him in the foot with a pistol.
Or
But,
did you turn on insta kill?
Yeah.
But why don't you talk about for a second how this is produced? Like how from Halo 3, how we produce an episode and what exactly takes place when?
So, well, the first thing we do is build the map. We place weapons all over the map with Forge in a room. I say all over the map, not all over the map, in one spot, and we remove all the other weapons lying around the map.
And spawn points.
And spawn points. So basically everyone spawns in the same area, and there's just a pile of weapons. So Caboose has to go and pick up his assault rifle and pistol. Sarge has to pick up his shotgun. If Church was in it, I guess he'd have his sniper.
And for Valhalla, we actually have a few different maps. Like if you're going to shoot at Red Base,
Right.
you choose the Red Base map, and everyone spawns at Red Base next to their weapons.
Which is something I didn't do for Relocated. I spent a lot of my time walking across the goddamn map from either end.
Yep.
It's actually kind of funny because I position everyone in place, and then the director would come in and he'd spawn at the opposite end, and you'd have to walk all the way across the map to them. I could just imagine like the characters just standing around like on set waiting for the director to show up.
Is that what you think about it? See, I always think about how much it mimics real life because if you're across the map, you look for a car. Like you look for a transport to get you across the map faster.
Is there a mongoose on this side of the map so I can drive it to the other? So I can drive it to the set.
And that seems very silly to me that in a digital world, that you will get in a car to go somewhere faster.
It's funny.
Like, well, do I want to walk over to the car back here to get in it to drive across the map, or is it better just to like hoof it across the map?
Yeah. Take the man cannon.
It really does become a more physical space in your mind, doesn't it, when you start dealing with it in that way?
It's true.
Like, you actually know the different, I'm sure, the little nooks and crannies of Valhalla now better than anybody.
Yeah.
And Sandtrap.
God, Sandtrap. We shot some stuff in Sandtrap in the temple, as we called it.
Right.
I have never been in those rooms. I've never played a game of Sandtrap where I went in those buildings.
And we were talking about this.
It's
and
like it was a whole new world to me. And I was like, I had to actually walk around to get my bearings. And I've been in Sandtrap before, but the innards of Sandtrap was brand new to me.
and it's crazy the stuff you find that you can use, right?
Yeah.
For
And
mission purposes.
one of the things we dealt with in there is that even inside, because it's sand, everything's unlevel. So I'd have
Right.
characters way taller than other ones. So you get like looking down, looking up, which is kind of nice because everything's usually so like level planed in Red vs. Blue previously.
Well, the original Blood Gulch in Halo 1 was like that. You don't think about the middle of that canyon. That thing is just nonstop hills from one base to the next. So it was impossible to find a flat space to shoot on ever. And in Halo 1, they didn't have the cool engine where they could move their ankles. So their feet were just like hanging out in midair. So we had to be very careful about not showing feet. And so you're saying after we do Forge.
After we forged in all the weapons, we get the characters in to pick up their weapons, stand them in place. And then, at that point, the director box, which is a separate Xbox and a separate account, joins the game over System Link and walks over to the set and then stares at the characters. We play the audio and bob the heads. And obviously stand the direct. I have a few times bobbed some heads, then gone into theater mode to shoot it, just to find that the director's standing like in the middle of the goddamn shot.
Right.
Which has
happened.
happened. It's happened a few times. Does that ever happen to you?
Well, back in Halo 1 and Halo 2 days, you literally used the camera,
Right.
the character as the camera.
Because you crop out the HUD.
And you did it live in the game. But
But now that everything's HD, you can't really crop because you'd lose your resolution. So we have to go into theater to get rid of the HUD.
Exactly. You know, we would have done that in Halo 1 had we had the ability to remove the HUD. We just didn't have the ability before.
Exactly.
But the
But there are definitely benefits to shooting live.
There are.
Over bobbing the heads, then quitting out of the game and going into theater mode. The main thing is just fast forwarding. Like we'll shoot an episode. It might be a 45-minute to an hour file, and you've got to fast forward through it.
and the fastest that the Halo 3 engine will fast forward is about 2 times.
Yeah, double speed. So if you got an hour save film, you're gonna, at least half an hour of fast forwarding to
Half an hour.
to get to the bits.
Which is another case where it's very, very convenient that the engine allows you to rewind because you pass it quite a bit. And if you had to fast forward through 15 minutes,
I remember we did a piece for the ODST virals where we had to have Sergeant Johnson shoot lasers through his eyes into a chieftain.
Yep.
And I had to go and shoot that chieftain getting shot with a laser in Halo 3 campaign. And you got to play through the level to do it. And I wanted to get a few angles, and that literally meant quitting out of the game once I'd gone past that moment and starting the save film again and fast forwarding like another 20 minutes to get to that moment.
and it was 20 minutes in.
Yeah.
And you can't make a clip of it. So if you don't get your camera right on that shot, then you're just going back and you're having to go from the start. That's what makes it hard. It's one of the little tweaks about the Halo engine that makes it perfect for machinima, which is what this is called, making movies from video games. It's called machinima.
Which is why machinima will be a lot more difficult in ODST.
It would be.
I remember for those virals we had to do everything around the Covenant because we did it in Firefight.
Right?
So on one of the virals when it's actually shot in ODST, you didn't see it, but I was actually stood in the entrances just killing Covenant.
Mowing them down.
Slaying them, with the turret. So they didn't come in and stand in the middle of the shot. Because it did happen. You get like a needle or a plasma bolt come and hit Sarge right in the face.
Yeah, but one of the advantages of ODST is that all the multiplayer spaces are literally taken from the campaign. They're like lifted out of campaign and put down for multiplayer. Halo 3 is not like that. There is no Valhalla in the campaign. It doesn't exist. That was your first shot in Sandtrap that just went by there.
Yeah. Well, that wasn't shot by me. That was shot by you.
Well, it's it was
It was the first hint of
little
Sandtrap.
foreshadowing for some pain that you were going to feel later in life.
Did you put a filter over that? It looked all flashbacky.
It was more flat. It was flashbacky, and it was also meant to be like overblown sun kind of filter. And also, you have the first indication that something is there.
Right.
We see CT go by in the foreground. That something mysterious is going on at Sandtrap.
At this point, all this every time the sand or under the sand or Sandtrap is mentioned, I'm pretty sure everyone's they just can't wait to see Tucker.
Pretty much.
Because they knew he was there, right? From reconstruction.
Yeah, and it was a conscious decision to leave out some of the characters, and when leaving out Tucker was a very big deal. And I had no idea that Tucker was as popular as he was. Because Donut wasn't in Reconstruction either. But everyone really wanted to know about where was Tucker. And so
That's pretty much all we read in the comments, though. Like as it as the series progressed, it started off with where's this, where's her, listing characters. Eventually, they started coming back in, but there'd always be a character that somebody wanted to see come back.
Right.
Like it got to the point where we literally had Church and Tucker back, and it'd be like, where's Sheila? Where's Andy the Bob?
Where's Phil? This was actually a source of much debate here. You'll notice we're doing shots of Wash's feet, of Wash's head close up, because someone pointed out, why would Wash be in prison and be holding a gun?
Right.
And I had to shoot back, why would Wash be in prison and be wearing a suit of power armor? let's let him keep the battle armor.
Yeah.
It's just one of the limitations of the engine. And
it's one of those moments where you just have to say, you know what, it is a video game.
Yeah.
Not that you want to set the plot around stuff like that, but
no,
we can't have Washington in prison slacks.
But we had it was really funny because after we did Reconstruction, Shannon McCormick, who plays Agent Washington, he's relatively new to our cast.
Mm-hmm.
And so we did interviews with him and the director and the chairman from Reconstruction, actual on-screen interviews. And I asked him, I said, hey, what do you think is going to happen with Agent Washington after this? And he went to this big, actor. He's like, well, I think Agent Washington has done some good work, and he'll finally be rewarded. And, and I think he's definitely going to be in charge of something. I think he's going to get some kind of reward. And I said, yeah, he's going to prison.
And Shadow goes, he's going to prison?
And we put that up after this episode. We put that online for the sponsors.
Where can people find that video?
I think it's available for sponsors up on the website.
On roosterteeth.com.
I don't think that's going to make it on this DVD because it'd be really out of place to suddenly have an on-screen actor talking.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there's no
live action.
There's not much live action stuff on the DVD.
The prison guard in that scene was played by Brandon.
A new member of the Rooster Teeth staff.
Yeah, the newest member.
Listen, if you come work in this office, you're getting in that sound booth at some point.
Yeah, Brandon did the voice of the guard and also some generic ODSTs dying in the upcoming fight scene.
Yeah, and Nate,
I told him to get in there and ad-lib some, as if he'd been shot. I think at one point he yelled, "Oh, ballsack," which is very Brandon of him.
And you, I'm imagining, kept that in.
I kept it. It's very low. I'm pretty sure you have to crank your system up to hear.
Really?
Oh, ballsack.
So that's how you have your professionalism, is you just turn down the ball sack.
Yeah.
You still leave it in, but turn it
way down.
This is one of my favorite moments too. Is that this is a scene where Donut leaves by jumping into the airlift here at the end at the man cannon. We've always associated the Valhalla man cannons with Donut. And I love the idea of Donut and Caboose just talking with one another, and then Donut jumps into the man cannon, inherently understands what it is and how it works. And Caboose, who's been here for who knows how long at this point, he never even thought to try it and doesn't know what it's for.
Yeah.
I love little stuff like that. I love another thing I like to do is take stuff on the map and try to give it some kind of purpose, because that's where Red versus Blue started, right? It started as here he goes. Woo.
It's a cool shot.
So that's how that works.
Donk.
Thank you. This is one of the ones I think I did. I think you're about to take over at this point, right?
Coming up soon.
Yeah.
These kind of shots, any shot where there's a body on the ground, it's always more stressful, because you can place anything in the map. Oh. Caught on fire. You can place any objects on the map and they'll stay there. But a body will disappear, and also it won't land in the exact same place every time.
To me, the hard part, the hardest thing to deal with in that regard is, more so than dead bodies, damaged vehicles.
Right.
I cannot figure out how long a damaged vehicle will stay there. Or just a respawning vehicle in general.
If you drive a vehicle away from the place it spawned and then just leave it, it will just disappear and come back to where it spawned after some time, unless you stand right next to it.
And what do we call that?
You call that babysitting.
We do. We have babysitters.
Who's babysitting? We had a lot of that going on with the choppers and the prowler in the final episodes.
In the sand trap stuff, yeah.
We'd run into some problems where before every take we'd have to be like, right, wait, everyone look around. Is everything still where it was? And often it wasn't.
It's funny, too, because we have a lot of vocabulary that's very specific to Red versus Blue production. We have babysitters that sit next to vehicles.
Yep.
When you're head bobbing, you can top out.
Right. Which is where you look too high and your head starts bobbing, right?
Yeah, you can look up and down. Your character on your screen looks like it's still looking up and down, but you've reached some kind of... It's the height of the animation of the character, and it's no longer bobbing. You can only go down from there.
And different weapons give different levels of topping out.
Yeah, there's a different ceiling for each one.
Yeah, for example, the sword. The sword is crazy to do head bobs with. It's really violently like up and down. So what I tend to do is zoom in, so you move slower.
You mean that you zoom the character in who's got the sword?
Right. You just go into his 2x scope which slows the movement down and
'Cause you're
looks
looking-
less insane. You'll see in some shots where I clearly wasn't zoomed in, the head moves a lot faster than everyone else's, and you turn a lot differently. You can pretty much turn 180 without swinging your legs, which is an issue with turning characters with the regular guns, is that you have a certain amount of turn and then the whole body goes and swings around, which looks kind of jarring in some situations. If it's meant to be like a subtle head turn and the whole body goes whoop, it's kind of disturbing.
Another vocabulary word here is dead zone. He's in the dead zone.
Right.
And that is when you're looking down, there's a weird point at which, in your arc of, say, looking from straight ahead to looking down at your feet, there's a weird area in there where your head bobbing is minimized. I don't know how else to put it. It's just the range is less in there.
Yeah, that can also be caused if you're looking at someone. If your reticle goes over another player, it'll slow down. What was that you're looking at?
I'm looking at this is the scene with Caboose sneaking around.
Oh yeah,
And we had a lot of fun with
was
this
this
one.
fun to do?
Yeah, we had a lot of fun with that. I wish actually we had had more time to set up more things and do more Caboose popping up. But that's where we ran into another vocabulary word. We ran into the bump.
The bump.
Because he's hiding behind a bunch of things. In fact, I'm sure if you look closely, you can see slivers of blue. Nice thing about working in a video game.
That right there, that epsilon going down on the ground, that's the first shot I did.
Is it?
Mhm.
You mean here?
The first shot I did when I took over as director. Yeah.
And, well, we can talk about this in a second. This is how we designed Delta for recreation. He's entirely different. This is the epsilon representation of Delta.
And this is a good example of finding out stuff you'd never in a million years find out if you were just playing the game. But when an invisible guy, a guy with camo, which is what Delta is right now, stands on a teleport, if you look from below up at him, he will go completely transparent, and you won't be able to see what's behind him. He'll just go, like, the green would be hollowed out, and you'd be able to see straight through him with no green, unless you go above him and shoot slightly down on him, and then you can see through him.
Really?
Yeah, and how would you ever find that out without wanting to shoot?
Also, we had to find a place. He's standing in a teleporter, essentially. We set up a teleporter, a receiver node, right? Not a sender node, because then he would have been teleported. His character would have. And he also has to be standing in it forward of the middle plane and not behind the middle plane, because if he goes behind the middle plane, then he disappears as well.
Right.
So it was a very specific way in which he had to stand.
Also, you notice on this zoomed-in shot that the rippling effect isn't there. It's just kind of... It's a different effect when you're zoomed in. Like, if I zoomed in on this character right now, it would look completely different.
You know, the engine handles that differently. People who take screenshots have seen that. Like, the blood effects disappear unless you zoom in. If you get too close, they disappear.
Yeah. And you'll notice on the shot where I pan around the back of Delta and you can see straight through him into Caboose, through his arm. In this shot right now, if I was zoomed in, you wouldn't get the ripple.
Right.
Like the warbled kind of distorted effect of Caboose.
And this is something we really like. I always would prefer to do any visual effect, because you see here as Caboose crosses over Delta, that would take forever if we had to do that in post-production.
Exactly.
But if we can find something that the game can do natively, it's awesome, because then we just set it up and shoot it, and the game handles all of that crazy rendering on its own and in real time.
I think this looks great. I think it's a great effect, standing an invisible guy on a teleport.
Yeah.
It's a nice new way to see Delta.
It was also, Delta was always a Halo 1 character.
Yeah, which is why we gave him the Mark V helmet like Caboose has. Right there, when you see Caboose green glow, that was actually, I was just stood next to him with a plasma pistol.
That's a very old trick we use.
Yeah, you did that a lot with Delta.
With Delta. Whenever Delta was in the room, we shined a light on them.
Yeah, and that effect of the green sweeping around the back of Caboose as Delta turns off, that was a regenerator as it explodes, like one of those green health regenerators. And as it explodes, it does that very quickly. So in theater mode, I did it in slow motion, and it kind of very slowly swept around the back of Caboose for that effect.
Very cool environmental effect. I love it.
Yeah, it's cool.
I remember when we first discovered that you could shine a plasma pistol on someone and the green effect would go on them. It really helps seal it. You don't even notice it, but it seals that there's somebody in the room who's glowing green.
And that really helped because I couldn't really show any wide shots of that Delta and Caboose conversation, because you would have seen the base of the teleporter that Delta was standing on.
Then there won't be any more blues here, which means they'll probably sing. Actually, I'm gonna go find Tucker and bring it back. There will be 2 blues, plenty for you to fight.
Why don't I have confidence in this mission?
Yeah, it sounds super dangerous, but I'm sure I can manage. I've done dangerous stuff.
But going back to
before,
the scene that we were just in from Valhalla, where Caboose was sneaking around, what I was going to say was that one of the really great things about working in a video game engine and in machinima is that we can have 5 different versions of the character, so we can just place him around the map,
Right.
and just have him jump up in different places, and it looks like it's one character moving across. Of course, we have to deal with the bump, where whenever we get near an object, it goes, it starts moving around on its own, which now we found even characters do as well.
Yeah.
If a character wants to sit still, which I don't think we've ever run into before, but we were running into that for Washington.
It turns out that if you lower your gun, you do the combination on the controller to lower your gun, which is the built-in machinima feature, I guess.
You want to tell them what that is?
You can.
It is left bumper, right bumper, click the left stick, hit A,
And then down on the D-pad,
and then
right?
hold down on the D-pad, all at the same time.
And the easiest way to hit down on the D-pad, once you've got a left stick, left bumper, right bumper, and A, is just to hit it with your nose.
Hit it with your nose. Exactly right.
I reckon this production has the most nose marks on a controller, right?
Probably
The
so.
most noses touched on a controller.
Probably.
This is an interesting episode because I put in a shot. This is my first episode. I'm still kind of, experimenting. I put in a first-person shot originally. As Sarge walked in, I had it from literally his point of view down the barrel of his shotgun.
You saw his shot like it was in the game.
Yeah, and you were like, hate it.
We had a big long discussion about that.
But Jeff was like, that's an awesome shot, and you were like, I hate it so much.
because it took me out and it made me think of Halo.
That's a good point. You're right. I mean, it just kicks you in the face, and it's like, well, yeah, you're playing a video game. It's like you're watching someone play a video game now.
And we've never had a shot like that.
Yeah. Well, you've had
ever.
point of view shots from the Alien, I think, before.
Point of view shots.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But never with a gun down the gun like it would be in game.
Right, and walking around and things like that. I think the one where we showed the reticle as part of the scene was when the tank was targeting Griff and Simmons.
Mm-hmm. We used
And-
a plasma pistol.
And we used
for
a
that.
plasma pistol for that. And our tone lock sound effect. Yeah, we have a big directory of just random sound effects called useful files. Useful files is this big garbage bin of just sound effects,
It's
basically.
everything.
And backgrounds. All the background sounds for every map.
Yeah.
Like it's 3 minutes of Valhalla. Tweeting birds and seagulls. And
So when you were building that library of background sounds, were you just literally standing in the map and you just hit record?
it depends on which one it was. You want to talk about this?
Yeah.
I'll come back to this in a second, but here's the
You'll notice
Warthog.
in the establishing shot of this scene, there's a Gauss hog.
There is?
We cut it out of a map where you can have the Gauss hog, but you can't have that Gauss hog in Valhalla,
You cannot.
which is it's a bit of a bitch when we pretty much wrote the whole of relocated around them getting the Gauss hog, which is why we had the danger room in the end, really.
Exactly. And here they go underwater. We had
Now
fun
that
with
was
this.
that was pretty tough to do. We had to do that in Forge. I just picked up the Warthog in Forge with no one in it and just shoved it really fast into the water, because if there was someone in it, it would glitch like crazy because you're pushing a character through an invisible wall that they're not allowed to go through. This shot here of it coming out is high ground
Right.
because you can't actually get that deep in the water on this map, which is
Zanzibar.
Zanzibar,
Last resort.
last resort.
Yeah, but couldn't you have somebody in the turret? Or was
No,
nobody at all?
because you push it in and then it would just snap back out and like it could doof, 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 and like bob in like you're smashing into an invisible wall.
A lot of wide shots in that. A lot of wide
a lot
shots.
of wide shots, a lot of top down, so you can't really see it against anything. But obviously, yeah, we were using the regular Warthog.
It's the kind of thing that happens in movies all the time. You fake stuff and cheat stuff, and you do it fast enough to where nobody's going to notice. Or maybe in a movie theater, maybe 3 people in an entire movie theater might notice.
Right.
You know?
And that's the kind of thing that if you don't play Halo, you're probably not going to notice that.
You're not going to be looking for the machine gun turret on
'cause
the
you
Jeep.
wouldn't really know the difference.
Right, you really wouldn't notice. However, on the internet, it's entirely different, because you'll get about a page and a half of comments where people say, "Hey, I really like this," and then one person says, "Hey, I noticed the Jeep had a different turret," and then guess what? Everyone after that person also noticed
Yeah.
that. How did that happen?
It's like as soon as one person notices, suddenly everyone realized at the same time.
Oh, I saw that too. I noticed that too, but it wasn't a mistake. It was something we were well aware of, and we just tried to, shoot around it as best we could. In fact, we made a deleted scene, or there's an Easter egg on this DVD. Hopefully, if it doesn't get cut, because we're running out of space issues. But there's an Easter egg that's related to that specifically.
Yeah. You'll notice here I'm bobbing Sarge's shotgun quite high because his shotgun will go through the windshield of that hog
Right.
if you aim too low.
That's one of the things I like about Red versus Blue and the characters that we've established is that there's some things that are exceptionally consistent. that Griff from the Red vs. Blue trailer back in 2002. Griff is always the driver of the Jeep. That's
Right.
his job.
For no reason, and it's never even mentioned.
It doesn't.
It's just assumed that in a situation of panic, like Griff's gonna get in the driver's seat.
That is his job. That's what
Yeah.
he does.
He's the driver.
Yeah, and he and in the trailer he's driving the Jeep and he gets out of the Jeep. That's where that came from. And it was a big deal back in Halo 1 when we got a orange character in the driver's seat and Simmons, a maroon character,
Yeah.
into the
That's something
into
you
the
take
turret.
for granted now. I mean, I recently went back to Halo 1. And it's like, whoa.
You can't get in the same Jeep.
You can't even get in the same Jeep as someone else. You fall. You die from falling off a high object. That's something you take for granted.
It was probably one of our first visual effects too, was getting those two in the Jeep together.
Yeah.
And then after that, it was just red. You know, we had to shoot around. We had to shoot around the driver. Imagine having a Warthog scene. Imagine if you had to shoot Sandtrap, and you had to disguise the driver.
Yeah.
Like when you wanted to shoot Caboose in the turret, you would have had to have all blue guys in the Jeep, and just only show Caboose. It would have been harder, you know.
Yeah.
So those little tweaks that make your life a lot easier. Ah, the first Sandtrap scenes.
Yeah.
You must be excited.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the,
Now, this is a... We had a discussion about this shot of Sarge's shotgun up. You can't... I mean, I can raise the gun to usual, like, pointing at a person by pressing the left bumper with no grenades. The gun just comes up.
right,
But I can't lower the gun
right.
without left bumper, right bumper, click, and A, which means you jump. So I can't have him raise the gun, do a few lines, and lower the gun in the same shot. Which is why it cuts to a wide, and then he then lowers the gun, because he's jumped before that take started.
Right. You can kind of set it up. If you want them to lower their gun in a shot, you can do everything except that last nose step. You can hold all the other buttons.
Right, but you still have to jump. And I can't have him jump in the middle of giving dialogue.
Well, you can't have him jump. You can't have him lower the gun or raise the gun and then reset. But before the scene,
Right,
you can set everything up.
which is what we did in that wide shot. He'd already jumped.
Yeah, he'd already jumped, then he lowers the gun. Or and then you have to offset the crouch because the left stick makes you crouch as well. So you have to start in a toggle crouch.
It pretty much, if you were to stand and watch a scene of Red vs. Blue get shot, you'd see everyone run to a room, pick up their guns, stand in place, jump up in the air, crouch, and lower their gun. And imagine all the actors on a movie set doing that.
Yeah.
Like crouching and jumping before a take.
And we don't have, a big thing. We shoot live action now with our RT shorts. And we have the slate, which is like, here's the start of actions. Click, slate. Well, like Gavin said, when we shoot bobbing heads for, say, 45 minutes in a save file, imagine if you have a save file where sometimes Caboose is moving his head and sometimes Griff is moving his head. You'd never be able to figure out what line was what. So
Exactly.
we do a lot of notes of writing what time we do things. We actually run a big stopwatch clock. And we note when we do certain lines. We have scripts and we make all these marks. But inside the scene itself, we'll also have everybody right before a take. Everybody crouches a bunch.
Yeah.
So it's like that's our slate. This is the beginning of a take.
Everyone starts humping the ground.
Yeah. And then we know, and we'll even make notes like, Griff did the double crouch, and that's where the scene is.
Yeah. Now this effect coming up of Sarge stepping forwards and getting hit with a mine, that was done with a trip mine, and not the actual landmines that are actually under the sand here.
And you'll note there's something that happened right there. It actually works with that mine, but we play a game type that has no shields, and the characters have pretty much normal health. Sometimes we'll give them infinite health if we want them to live. And the big thing is we don't give them grenades.
Right.
Because people accidentally throw grenades all the time, so they have no grenades. And there's a thing, though, in Halo, even if you don't have a shield, you have some kind of reserve health thing, and I think it's to indicate when you're playing the game when you've got a guy's shields down, and you bring his shields all the way down, and then there's this flare of gold, and that's
the shield pop.
Yeah, and we'll say that too. We'll say, hey, get rid of his gold. Like if a new character comes in or a character respawns, we have to get rid of their gold, which means somebody has to shoot them in the foot or throw a grenade somewhere nearby that won't damage them.
Yeah.
And it can be pretty far away. It can be really far.
Even if you have instant kill on, where if you touch an enemy they die, you can still throw a grenade pretty far away and it will pop the shield but do no damage to them whatsoever.
Right.
And
it won't come back.
Cool.
Once that gold is gone, it's gone for good.
Until they respawn.
Until they respawn.
Yeah.
Right, with that character it's gone.
I remember in Halo 2 you could just punch you could just melee and you'd get rid of your gold. I'm not sure if that's the same in Halo 3.
No, we can't. I mean, we can do other things. A big thing that gets rid of it is a Gauss cannon shoot shots somewhere nearby.
Right.
We'll do it too. So sometimes when we had the Gauss cannon, we could fire it, and everybody's gold would go gone. We'd get rid of all their gold in 1 second.
That shot of the Gauss hog hitting the side of the elephant, that was an example where if you watch the episodes online where I'd do dumb stuff with the opening titles, like I'd have the titles interact with the shot. So if you watch that episode online, that's a funny shot, Caboose. If you watch the episode online, you'll see the hog smash into the Rooster Teeth logo and knock it sideways. I like a lot of fun doing stuff like that.
You did, and it became kind of a theme for you. And I think we had a discussion at the time when
I'm basically just making it difficult.
when it came down the
justify
waterfall. Yeah, when it came down the waterfall, I said, "So you're sticking with this thing, huh? We're doing this every episode."
I just love that establishing shot of the waterfall. I was like, let's do something dumb with the title here. So the Rooster Teeth comes down the waterfall.
Yeah, that's the thing. Valhalla is almost too pretty.
Yeah,
One side has a
nice,
waterfall,
right?
and the other side has a nice big lake.
Yeah,
and it
big
seems like too
vista.
nice a place to put these guys.
Now this is the introduction of CT, played by Michael Joplin.
Who played Private Henderson in Reconstruction? He played the guy who's being interrogated in the very first episode and telling the story of what happened at Valhalla.
That's right.
And we really liked him, so we brought him back to play CT, who we're not going to talk a lot about. CT is intended to be just a character who, if you understand a lot about the Red vs. Blue universe, you can probably figure out who CT is. But he's kind of one of those characters, for why I think of him, he just kind of bounces off the Red vs. Blue storyline.
Yeah, he's kind of he's a bad guy with not a lot of power. He's kind of a henchman kind of guy, isn't he?
Right, and he's doing something, and it's kind of even mysterious. Like like I said, if you know about the Red vs. Blue universe, you might think he's one thing, but perhaps he's not.
Right.
And maybe we'll do something more with CT later, but maybe some backstory with him. But yeah, he's not meant to be. He's meant to be villain. You know,
Yeah,
he's
just generic villain.
without going too deep into it, because I didn't want to get people too involved with CT and then detract from the fact of what was going on with Washington.
Going back to that, the first shot we see of the elephant, which is the big, huge vehicle in Sandtrap, you always wrote in the scripts, oh, there's a turretless warthog there. That was an effect that we did. But going back to the elephant.
You saw Caboose bump there, too.
Yeah.
In that shot. Okay, sorry. Turtless, you said the...
The shot of the elephant, what you would do when you were writing the scripts, you would write as though someone who didn't play Halo was reading the script.
I stopped doing that.
Yeah, because like you would write down motorcycles or big tractor trailer as you wrote for the elephant, and I'd come to you and be like, "You mean the elephant, right?"
And later on, I was saying, and then later I was Caboose and Sarge stand in the room lit up by a mongoose. You know,
Yeah,
I would later
yeah.
do that. And this is Orbital. This is one of the new map packs that came out. This came out, I think, 2 months after we finished Reconstruction. I got to see it, though, before we finished Reconstruction, and I always intended this to be the Freelancer command.
Right.
Instead of Standoff. But, so this is intended to be somewhere, somewhere in the complex of buildings that would be Freelancer command.
If you,
But we didn't get to use it for that, so now it's a prison.
Yeah. If you played Halo, you'll know that you can, if you're on this map, you can only open these doors in a team game, which is why we had to shoot Washington and the guards standing in front of a different door that didn't open.
My dear Agent Washington.
And then that shot of the door opening is just a team game with just a generic white dude opening the door.
Yeah, I didn't know that, and it works for me.
Because if I was to stand Agent Washington and the guard in front of that door, it'd be open because because they're not team colors.
And when we were wrapping up, Recreation, Halo ODST also came out with 3 new multiplayer maps for Halo
Right.
3.
The second half of the Mythic map pack.
Stayed away from them. I didn't even look at them because I was afraid of. I know as soon as I see a map, the props, which are the items in the Forge maps, and the environments themselves. Those are what we use to inspire the stories of Red versus Blue, because we just walk around in them and we see a crashed pelican and we can come up with a story for why that pelican right there is in the background. We can see a space and here's what we can do now. It opens up a whole new set of scenes that we can do. More so than like save a new armor or anything like that is if we have a new set, it's a whole new world.
Yeah.
Literally. So
What was your reaction when you first saw that crashed pelican? When you first saw Halo 3?
That was one of the first things I saw in Halo 3. We went up to Bungie and they showed us in advance, before the multiplayer beta, which was about 6 or 7 months before Halo came out, Halo 3, and our last scenes in the Blood Gulch Chronicle, we had a Pelican taking off.
Mm-hmm.
So here we go. I mean, it was perfect.
It was perfect.
Yeah, it was. Sometimes you get lucky. It's always better to get lucky, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure you can say that with some of the shots in Red versus Blue as well. Some of the ones you're like, how the hell did I get that? Okay, that's great. In fact, we were just filming this week. We were filming the scene later in Sandtrap where Tucker flies off the ridge to crush the ODSTs on the Mongoose.
Yeah.
I guess we should call them. They're more just troopers.
Yeah, we just call them ODSTs because of the helmet they're wearing, I guess.
Yeah, they're not actually ODSTs. They're just... Originally, they were the Freelancer Corps, which were the part of Freelancers that were the just generic soldiers that weren't the Freelancers themselves.
But you do very often get lucky in some shots that you'd think would be very difficult. For instance, that shot of Caboose falling down from super high up in Sandtrap after he's been stepped on a landmine. That was first take. We had Caboose stood up on a Hornet, just standing on a hovering Hornet, and then we had him change teams.
And there he goes. He
just fell.
Falls to his death.
Exactly on cue in the middle of everyone's head bobs. It just was timed right. It took him a good 8 seconds to hit the ground there.
And that's something cool that we discovered in Halo 3 is that you can have people change teams and it'll kill them.
Yeah. But there's some weird stuff that, once again, you wouldn't think of unless you were doing stuff like this. If you change teams on your Xbox that you're on, you will collapse and stay the color that you were and respawn in your different color. On everyone else's Xbox, you change color immediately.
Really?
So that shot of Caboose falling, he was actually green, and I changed him to blue, and he died blue.
Oh, you're saying he was alive as green?
He was alive as green. I changed him to blue, and he changed instantly. On his Xbox, though, he died a green guy.
You couldn't make him red? You just couldn't bring yourself to make Caboose red? Red Caboose would be kind of funny.
Yeah.
Are we clear?
Yes.
Okay, then head down there. On the left, you'll find some wrecked jeeps you can scavenge for parts.
It's always when you're from a writing perspective, it's always kind of tricky to write people who are lying, because if a character is being devious, people get worried. You're establishing the character, so to just establish a devious character can be hard because he's lying about everything he says.
Mm-hmm.
And if he's lying about everything he says, people still get it in their head that that's the truth. And you have to be careful about not seemingly violating continuity by having a character who's a liar.
Yep. This shot right now, this reveal of the bodies, that was shot backwards.
Oh, really? That's interesting.
Because I couldn't see where I was going with the camera. I couldn't back it out through the elephant and then round the corner without seeing where I was going. So I shot it backwards.
Very, very interesting. So if you probably look at the idle animation for Smith and CT there, you will note that they probably look a little odd. They're breathing that they do when they stand there.
Now, to get this Warthog without the turret is in Forge mode, you have to start a new round. And while the round is resetting, someone else places a Mongoose. Or a Warthog.
Yeah.
It just, for some reason, doesn't have the turret on when it spawns.
And it works with just about everything. It works with
works with anything
Scorpion
with
tank.
a secondary seat, right?
Yeah, it works with a Wraith even. That looks weird.
Yeah, Wraith without a turret.
It looks really strange. And, we thought this would be, there's a motivation for this that's not really that important to the story of why they would have pulled their weapons off some of the vehicles. But, it's essentially that there's some crew. There was a crew there initially that's not a military crew.
Right.
They're an excavation crew. And then CT and his group came in, killed all of them, and those guys are actual mercenaries, and so they have there's two different sets of vehicles.
You'll notice now that all this stuff behind Griff, the alien stuff, when CT was saying that everything was on the left, like all the supplies and all that, just for a laugh, I put all the alien shit on the right.
Oh,
I figured that was where they'd keep their stuff. Aliens on the right, humans on the left.
How do you like working with the elephant?
How do I like what?
Working with the elephant.
It's kind of a bitch. Yeah. The start of every session of filming, you'd have to go and get it and drive it into that place, which it drives at about 5 miles an hour. I guess it takes a long time to drive. But an interesting thing, actually, at the beginning of this scene, where it fades to Griff trying to contact Simmons, and then Griff walks away, he bumps a stool on the ground, and in that take I used of Jeff reading for Griff, he bumped the mic. and it landed on that exact same spot. There's actually a small bump sound when he hits that stool, and that's not a sound effect. That's Jeff just bumping the mic, and it timed up perfectly. And I in a million years couldn't have planned that.
Jeff being unprofessional in the booth is.
There's a very you can turn it up and you'll hear that bump.
So that's a great example there of getting lucky.
Yeah.
and it's I tend to remember those moments too where we got lucky. There was a shot in season 1 that we did where Griff is standing on top of the base and we fired a warthog and it flipped up onto the base and then skidded backwards under its own momentum and hit Griff, but not enough to kill him, just enough to bump him.
Mm-hmm. I remember that shot.
And then we cut to a different version where we got in the warthog and then backed it up and hit him. And he goes, "What the hell?" Because we had to do it all live.
Yeah.
And that was probably our 6th take of that.
Really?
Some of the action stuff in
That's
Halo
not bad.
doesn't take very long at all.
But stuff like walking into a room, turning, and delivering a line. God, if there's 3 people trying to... We had a lot of fun doing this, these dumb blowing up the mongoose jokes. For this, we actually had 2 Simmons, because the Simmons who was riding that warthog died and flew right over the camera. Once again, got lucky.
I will miss him.
And we had a second Simmons run in and deliver that second line.
Hey, what's going on down here?
Bump.
One thing I like about Sandtrap too is how their feet sink into the sand a little bit.
It's kind of cool.
I almost wish we'd done more with, say, the footsteps. Because there's not many sets that we've been on where we've had the footstep effect. It's on Snowbound, and it's on Sandtrap, and I almost wish we'd done more with that.
You always tend to take out the live game audio, don't you? And just include a background sound
Yes.
for the map. So you don't usually hear people walking or
Right.
other stuff.
Do you do that?
I've done the same. I mean, it's difficult to cut so many different shots and have the levels match. It's a pain, so...
Especially there's a lot of times where we cheat things where you'll have 2 characters talking to each other, and one character's like 30 feet away, just because it's a better, framing for the shot
Right.
or lighting. Here they're kind of standing just on the edge of shadow, and that works really well there with CT. But if you do that, sometimes it really drastically changes the audio.
Is that mask the only one with eyes? With like individual eye holes?
Yeah, and you want to know something about that? This was actually one of the original designs for the meta character. The meta was going to be slowly taking pieces from people, and originally he was going to acquire. This is some storyline stuff we do way behind the scenes, but he was going to acquire this helmet from a freelancer, essentially CT's character, and he was going to go from the full dome that he has to the eyes, because I thought the eyes were I've always thought those were very evil looking.
Yeah,
like
they're
right
kind
there.
of menacing.
Yeah.
Especially when they're in the shade, they kind of go like a dark orange.
Right.
You'll notice in that shot there, the shot of the turret missing and CT, the turret was actually there in that shot, and I had to paint it out because you can't have CT in a Forge game.
Right. We had to be very careful about that. I
And
swore to Gavin. I swore to Gavin when we bring Church back in as a monitor. I know there's a reason why it's Griff, Sarge, and Caboose who go off together, because in a Forge game you can get blue, orange, and red teams. Simmons stays at home.
It's the gold team, it's known as.
It's gold team, yeah. Simmons stays at home because Simmons is maroon.
Yeah.
And you can't put Simmons in
And
a Forge game.
That's really the main reason is that Simmons stays to Valhalla.
One of the why his character, somebody had to stay behind.
Yeah.
It's one of the main reasons why his character was chosen to stay behind, and then we kind of wrote around that. It was a big motivator. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah. So
But then Tucker comes in.
Tucker comes in, and pretty much every shot of Church where I have to be in Forge, Tucker's standing right goddamn next to him, and I can't have Tucker in a Forge game. So I had to plan out which shots I wanted to do in Forge and which ones I wanted to do in a custom game
Right.
ahead of time.
Another big debate that we've had is whether or not to make Tex in the trailer make her black or make her steel.
Right.
Because she was black in Halo 1, and she was steel in Halo 2 because it didn't exist. But now we have the ability to do both, because you can make the leader black in Halo 3 games. Leader traits are a very big thing in Halo 3
Yeah.
that we have.
Because you can get colors that you can't usually have.
That and the fact that you can have one person who's got certain attributes that other people don't have.
Right.
Like 200% speed if you want to, or you can make that person invulnerable so you can blow up everything and this one person is invulnerable and stays invulnerable.
Prime example where we use that was when CT at the end of the season rams the alien Prowler.
Mm-hmm.
He basically smashed them onto a trip mine, which we tried before with everyone equal, and the Warthog would constantly blow up. CT would go flying over it, and
Right.
so we had him invulnerable. and we had him on instant kill. So he placed the trip mine, and as soon as the aliens touched it, they were obliterated, and he was fine.
And you can get to all these if you're not familiar with that. When you're making a game type in Halo, just like you can make a map in Forge, when you play in custom games, you can hit X and modify so many attributes of the game. You can modify what weapons people start with. Our guys all start with battle rifles. That's why Sarge has a pistol on his hip, and so does Caboose.
But Griff and Simmons don't.
But Griff and Simmons don't. They don't have pistols because they already start with their battle rifles. But you see Sarge there has a pistol.
And so does Caboose.
Yep, and because they have to pick up their assault rifle, but we don't want to have their battle rifles on their back. So they pick up, in Sarge's case, a shotgun and a pistol.
This is a great effect done by Nathan. You can't actually do this in the game. Yeah.
You know what? Of all the effects we get asked about, the number one effect when we do it is, how did you open that door?
Really?
Because I think people
people want to do that in the game. It's like, how do I get in here and close the door?
And the first line, or I should say involvement with Red vs. Blue that you had at all, was you read a line for a guard in Red vs. Blue Out of Mind.
Right.
And the door, we did the door opening in, I forget the name of it.
Containment.
Containment, thank you. The snow map in Halo 2. We got so many emails about that. How do you open the door? How do you get that open?
For a switch, right? Trying to do it. Now, this joke here of Griff trying to drive away, that was a kind of a moment where, as we were shooting, we came up with this. This wasn't originally in the script. At no point did Griff get up and drive the elephant away. It was just, I thought it'd be funny if he tried to drive away and it only moved at 5 miles an hour, and he's like, this is not even worth it. Fuck this.
That was in the script?
Nope.
The joke.
We came up with the joke as we were shooting, and then you wrote the script.
Based on it.
It wasn't ad-libbed, basically.
And
Tucker,
there was a kind of a funny ad lib in there though, or I don't know when it exactly came out, but going back to Griff always being the driver, he's trained on these vehicles, and so we made a nod. This is like a really kind of ancillary, obscure nod, but Griff, being the trained driver in the group, he understands why vehicles are supposed to have 6 pedals, and the elephant doesn't have 6 pedals.
It's a reference back to episode 6, I think.
Yeah, season 1.
Season 1.
Why Caboose doesn't understand why the vehicles have 6 pedals.
Now, this is the back of the chairman's head.
That's the back of the chairman's head.
Who is it? He was a guy who was standing in Rat's Nest. Is that the name of that map?
That is correct.
Crow's Nest. Which one's which? I think it's Crow's Nest for campaign.
It's Crow's Nest for campaign. Yeah.
And that was a guy. Actually, he was walking around the map, and I paused it and just positioned the camera behind him. And Matt did some awesome effects to age him slightly. His hair was originally brown, and he was wearing a different colored shirt.
And this is the chairman is played by Jack Lee.
Jack Lee,
who is reprising his role from Reconstruction. And there's actually a reverse shot of this, but you and I decided we didn't want to show the chairman's face.
Yeah.
So it was kind of hard, and I thought you did a great job with it, because it's hard to have a conversation between two people with you're shooting from essentially the same angle.
Yeah, it's just like push in and then push back over and again, because we can't shoot from the other way.
And I remember you were worried about the lighting effects here.
Yeah, I mean, I did all the head bobs of him standing in the exact same position, but Halo 3 will do a thing where if stuff gets too bright, it will like adjust the aperture and stop down for you, so things get darker. Like up close, he can sometimes look dark because I'm so close to him, and then when I come back out, he's bright because everything around him is dark. If that makes sense.
It does.
So the lighting changes based on where the camera is.
And I love the flare on him here, like on his shoulder pads.
Yeah, you'll see he's insanely bright from afar, and up close he's less bright.
And where did you shoot that?
That's Orbital.
That's Orbital. Back in Orbital.
Yeah, I like. That's a funny cutaway. Just that's the Valhalla scene for that episode.
Yeah, that's all we get from Valhalla.
Pretty much every episode would be like Sandtrap, back to Valhalla, all the other way around.
And did Nathan make that for you specifically for that episode, or was that just a different version?
On that one, I panned the camera. I put the camera up in the top of where the door is, and I just hit the bumper and descended the camera, and then I paused the side so only the door was moving.
Oh, cool! So you did your visual effect yourself.
Yeah, I do a few here and there.
Yeah. It's always better too. I mean, it's like really with Red vs. Blue, if we do add some things to really sweeten it up, but I mean, a lot of it you can do with very simple effects.
I mean, there are a lot of effect shots where you could just do them. I mean, a garbage mat, you just mat over it, right?
Garbage mat, yeah. Another term that we always say around the office. Oh, just garbage mat. Yeah. Which is an effect that we had in Premiere, and now we use Final Cut for this.
I'll occasionally do a map, like split the screen and have 2 takes occurring at different times in the same space, just for timing sometimes.
Oh yeah.
There's a shot of the of the Warthog landing behind the Reds at the end of the season, where they turn, and then the Warthog lands behind them. And that was obviously, that would have been really difficult to time for real, so we just plated it.
Well, that wasn't until we saw the Warthog land
Yeah.
that we even thought to do
And
that.
that was another joke where it's like, whoa, look where the Warthog landed.
So let's have the
So
guys
let's have
react
the
to
guys
it.
react to it, yeah.
And,
And,
a
they,
nice,
and they just happened to be sitting there. That's where we positioned them. That's where they ended up.
and so basically the way that works is the Warthogs land behind them.
Mhm.
And then we saw that in the game.
Yeah.
And then actually we saw that we went back and looked in the cinema mode. We saw that in theater mode. And we thought, oh, wow, well, that's great. No, it must have been in the game. It was definitely in the game.
Yeah.
We landed behind them. Because we went in the game, in the same game. We then just had them look to where the Warthog would have landed. The Warthog was then long gone when we went back to shoot that.
Yeah.
But because you can keep the camera in the exact same place while you fast forward through it, you get both those shots and you can combine them very easily.
You can definitely be smart about some things, and it pays off when you're cutting it together.
Right. If we'd have left that game, we would have never gotten back and gotten the same camera angle to make that match.
It's practically impossible to line up the same view from different games.
Which you
Un-
did some of that in Relocated.
Yeah, unless you turn on the coordinates, which is very, very time consuming.
And it doesn't really, I mean, it's, yeah. It's always better to set it up first and plan for
Yeah.
it. Because to get your 10th of a degree or whatever it is exactly right is impossible. You have to occupy the same coordinates in space and then have the same look coordinates. And it's
There's basically, what I'm going to guess is trillions of different combinations of where the camera could be
can't imagine.
in any given game.
Yeah. It's like walking down a city street and say, I'm going to stand in the exact same spot
Yeah.
and look in the exact same direction for the same exact angle. It's impossible.
It-
And
it's
tell people how to turn on the coordinates, just so they know.
You have to go. I don't even remember. Pan cam. You have to turn on pan cam, which is
Yeah.
a built-in feature, I guess, for Machinima. So you can use altitude on the triggers,
Yes.
because usually the bumper controls the up and down, which is, it's basically an on-off button. So you're gonna be moving or not at a given speed.
Right. You're either on or off.
Yeah,
It's a
like set
digital,
speed. You don't have any ramping of speed. It's just like click on, you're going up, click off.
but there is a way, and you should just look up Halo 3 Pan Cam
Yeah.
on the web, and with a certain button combination, you-
It's similar to the lowering the gun combo, except I think instead of pressing down, you press
left, I think.
left.
Left
maybe.
or right.
And then from there you can set the camera speed with more accuracy, and you can also turn on the coordinates.
Yeah.
And then another combination will leave it in pan cam and get rid of the coordinates so you can shoot.
And one of the cool things about having Tucker back is that we get Jason back, and Jason is probably the guy that I personally like to make jokes with the most, where I think we have a similar sense of humor. He's a very funny, very creative guy.
There's some good outtakes of you two coming up with funny stuff to say that's not anywhere close to what's written on the script. It's like, let's just say something funny here. Like,
We get asked sometimes for scripts of the episodes, and a lot of times there'll be 5 or 6 really funny moments in the script that aren't there, or in the episode that aren't in the script.
it's often the funniest stuff too, is stuff that just you guys come up with on the day of recording.
Jason came up with the team killing fucktard line.
Yeah.
It was originally something else. It was like, I forget what it was, but he was like throwing out different stuff, and he said team killing fucktard, and I thought that was hilarious.
He also came up with geographist.
Geographist. What am I, a geographist?
I think the original line was rock scientist, right?
Yeah. And here's Lopez in repair mode, which is kneeling next to a vehicle while we hear wrench noises.
Also humming the tune, right? From the
Yeah, I don't know if that do you think that comes across that Lopez is humming the
I don't know.
Warthog theme?
I think you had a cold on this episode.
I don't know. I'm cold regardless. I don't know if it would come across that Lopez is humming the Warthog theme.
Yeah.
It would be Lopez's favorite song, though.
Lopez ended up being one of the funniest characters this season. I guess because Church wasn't around. You're like, let's put all the Church funny into Lopez.
Well, Lopez hasn't changed very much over time. He's been a very consistent character.
Why did you melee there with the rocket launcher? I remember you were helping me do the acting out on this episode.
Whenever there's action, I like to try to vary it up in any way that I can. I was playing Tucker when Tucker. That's a funny moment. I like that. I was playing Tucker when Tucker hits CT's Warthog with the sword.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you can see it, but I crouched right before I swung the sword, and that was important to me because it would look a little bit different.
Okay.
I just want it's too easy for things to look the same if you just keep doing the same things over and over again, Right. I mean, whenever we do action in Red vs. Blue, I'm always very concerned because I do watch some other Halo machinima, and it tends to be more action-oriented because that seems natural in Halo to do that. And after a while, it starts to look like a bunch of dudes in a line firing battle rifles.
Yep.
You know, and there's only so many times that you can see that.
Now,
That's a Photoshop file?
Photoshop effect.
It's just a monitor that we then, like, set in the sand and then half erased to make it look like it was buried.
Now, this is an example. I have never been down this hallway in any game. I didn't even know this little corridor, I guess, is there.
I remember when we talked about this, like, and you see the level, like, that's completely askew right there. I love Tucker's sword, the way it looks on his belt.
Yeah.
Um,
There was a debate on whether to leave Jason going sound effect in.
did he make it in doing that? Is he in there?
Yeah.
When he pops his sword, he makes a sound effect.
Just for no reason, and nobody reacts to it.
It's really funny too because we were Church starts making sound effects too for the stuff he's doing inside of his monitor body, and it's just a lot of fun that these guys would sweeten their own experience.
It's like I can go backwards too.
But there's a whole like 2-minute long audio file of me making noises of Church routing, you know, going through his brain.
But some of the funny stuff that happens with action, I know on that shot of Tucker going off the top of the cliff in his chopper straight through the hole in the base. I'd say maybe that was, I did it on like the 15th try maybe. Probably wasn't that many. But that is all one shot. I mean, I know we cut to a bunch of ridiculous angles, but that's all one shot. And it's the same when the Warthog explodes behind Tucker and then lands behind the Reds. That's the same explosion. I mean, we didn't go and re-blow up a hog to get it to land behind the Reds. It's literally the same explosion that happened behind Tucker.
Right.
Sometimes you just get lucky.
A lot of times we'll go in. You don't go in to get another take of the big action scene. You go in to go get reaction shots.
Yeah.
Of people looking at where it should be. That was two big debates were in this episode. One big debate was Meta outside, when now Meta has lost his AI, and now he's having trouble using all the equipment that he's acquired because the AI assists him in the use of that equipment. So he's having trouble with his invisibility.
The way we did that effect, we had him cloaked with the invisibility and reload, and then we did it once the cloaking had worn off.
Right. And we just cut back and forth.
Yeah, I basically just I lined them up so they were the exact same motion at the same time, and I just chopped out the odd frame, and it flicked on and off.
I like that you had to do that, but I get to say we. That's fun.
Yeah.
I should have done this years ago. That's right. Yeah, we did this. Yeah. We went through and we cut up this thing and.
But that's another one of those quite simple effects that you can just do as you're editing.
But you and I had a debate about. I was talking to you from future writing, what's coming down the line about Meta and his trouble with the AI.
Yeah.
He was invisible, and you had him running through the water invisible. And I said, well, he can't be invisible because he doesn't have full control over that stuff. He's adjusting to his new state.
Right. And I was pushing for that shot there because I like the effect of a splash, but you couldn't see where he was. It's just like he's jumping off the rock and it's splash, but you can't see him. And I guess his camo wears off after that.
I went through like a 10-minute explanation of why he had to be visible in there because this is why and this is the reasoning in the story and here's the layers that's going to lead into and Gavin's reason was it looks really cool if he's invisible.
I want that one shot of a splash in the water where you can't see who's splashing.
Like look, invisible.
Yeah, let's sacrifice this major plot point just for the sake of this one shot.
Well, it's not really that major a plot point. I wouldn't say it's just for that character.
Yeah.
It's very important of why he would be having trouble and why he wouldn't be purely invisible.
And you'll notice now that the monitor is never in the same shot as Tucker because they can't be in the same game. So he's always positioned next to either Sarge, Griff, or Caboose.
I kept kind of keeping in the back of my mind that we could do a shot with them where we could just play it in or composite in.
I guess it's finding the right moment to do it.
And it just never seemed to be a problem.
I mean, as long as you establish... I mean, I can't do a big wide, but if I do like little wides on, occasional characters, you can kind of picture it in your head where everyone is standing in this room.
And you know what? I shouldn't say that too, because didn't we do that for the end scene with Tucker and Church? Yeah, so I guess that was the point at which we did it. That was important that they were in the same shot together.
Yeah.
The other thing that we passed, though, that I want to go back to was Lopez and Simmons loading their battle rifles at the same time.
Right, that was a big discussion. I mean, I did it. I just pressed both buttons on both controls at the same time. It took like two seconds to do. And
yeah.
I thought, it looks very video gamey. It looks like two robots reloading. But we kept it in, decided to keep it in, and people love that shot.
Yeah.
People comment on that. Whoa, how'd you get them to reload at the exact same time? It's like, it was really just a throwaway kind of, I'm just going to click both these buttons with two hands.
Yeah. How'd you do it? Well, I pressed 2 buttons.
Press 2 buttons. And another challenge we had shooting with the monitor is that everyone knows about the bump when you get near stuff. If you have a monitor just hovering next to a character, they will continuously bump over and over again if they're just nearby. So I had to move the monitor like a little bit further away from Caboose than I probably originally framed it, because Caboose kept just going ka-dunk, ka-dunk every few seconds.
We learned a lot about the bump in Reconstruction. I learned a lot about trip mines in Recreation, man.
Yeah.
A lot about trip mines. When they're set off, when they explode. Don't turn next to one because turning counts as moving.
Because the trip mines, they're motion sensitive. You can place a trip mine under a Warthog and it won't go off until someone moves. So even if the guy in the turret just slightly nudges the turret,
bam,
it goes off.
One thing I always liked about Halo 3 is I've always wondered what the motivation is for the lights on their elbows and shoulders and knees. I've always wondered what that is. Is it just for if they're in the dark?
I guess so.
I mean, I know from the game it's so we can spot them.
It was a lot of fun doing this Church not being able to control his body again. It's kind of a nod back to Season 2 when he's inside Lopez,
a little
right?
bit.
He's
Yeah,
trying to
there's
work his own body.
Definitely a little bit of that going on for sure.
Now, getting the monitor to move at a slow speed and then slightly speed up is very difficult. You'll notice that he's moving quite slow, and then it's like, click, I'm moving faster.
Yeah, well,
it's almost as though there's less sensitivities of speed.
He's also less in control of his body. So
Yeah.
what can you do?
I remember one of the funny, because usually I would I'd shoot and cut together an episode, and then I'd show you for your approval as the writer. And I was subtitling Lopez on that scene where he says, "Wait, can't this guy change color?" And I spelled color the British way with a U. Do you remember that? And you and Jeff were watching it with me, and as soon as that came up, you guys were both like, "Hey, bullshit! Get that out!
Get that
Get
out!
that U out of color!"
Fuck that! Remove that.
That was me trying to sneak in.
It was funny. We both had a very visceral reaction to that U.
I thought that would just slip by, but obviously not.
Nope, no way, buddy.
Yeah.
You know,
trying to get
also
a British touch into the episodes.
So we're in the first scene of episode 16 here, and one of the big things that we do is title every episode, and they're never titled until
it's literally the last thing always.
Right. Oops, we need a title.
Yeah. We even had one episode. You had one episode come out where the title wasn't there.
Right. We didn't put it on.
Episode 5 never had a title online.
Well, it did have a title.
It had a title on the website, but it didn't show up in the episode.
It didn't show up in the episode.
So what I got into the habit of doing would be to put in a title right at the beginning with some placeholder text like episode 14 face butt and stuff like that.
Dick balls and stuff. And I kept telling
just so it'd be distracting. It'd be like, right, we got to change that.
I said it's gonna come back. It's gonna come back to haunt you. Yeah.
Never did though.
Whenever we put placeholder stuff, we have to make sure that we put in that's ridiculous. Like sometimes we'll have scratch tracks and things like that.
Yeah.
That we'll put in because, and it's so for instance, a big one was Jeff reading Donut's lines until Donut had the ability to read them, and we can't try to sound too much like Donuts because we want it to stand out. Filtering lines is a big deal too. If we filter the lines after the episode is cut, because it's a lot easier to work with unfiltered dialogue than filtered dialogue. And we actually have a dedicated computer in this office that does the red versus blue filter. It's almost like having a recipe for like some kind of chicken, like Kentucky Fried Chicken or the Coca-Cola formula. There's only one computer that can do that voice filter, and it's on there, and that's why we have that computer. And we can't get rid of it no matter what. But I was going to say about the titles of the episodes is that now after all this time, you'll ask me, you'll say, what's the title of this episode? And I want to make a title that's kind of funny, maybe a little bit punish for what's taking place in the episode. This one was called Retention Deficit because of what Church does with his memory here. And I want to make it so that later on, people can come back and say, oh, I want to see the episode where Church can't remember anything. And so then they can see Retention Deficit and say, okay, that was probably it.
Right.
And same thing with writing the summaries for the episodes. But at the same time, we don't want to spoil what's for people who haven't yet seen it. So it becomes difficult to, like, our summaries are always, you'll see, kind of strange.
Yeah.
And the names are very unspecific, but kind of tell you what's going to take place.
And we had to be careful when picking screenshots for the episode that they didn't give away anything that was happening in that episode.
And that they don't look like every other screenshot.
Yeah.
Like
pretty much every screenshot from a Sandtrap episode is just, it's 3 dudes standing in the desert. Now they're looking left.
Well, I mean, think about
what
what season 1 those if we had screenshots would have been. It's like,
One of the challenges of shooting in this, we call it the temple, I guess.
That's the sound effects of me looking through my head. There's probably about, like I said, about 5 minutes of
there's a lot of that.
somewhere.
But one of the challenges, because this is meant to be a closed-in room with only one door, which is the one they came through, and this is a game where you want to be shooting people and coming in and out. There's tons of doors. Like that little alleyway there behind church, that's just outside through that door. But I shot it so that you'd never see the daylight through those doors.
And we used a cutscene here from Halo 3.
Yeah.
Spoiler, if you haven't seen Halo 3.
Nathan did a pretty cool effect on that projector. And I was looking through projector sound effects, and I found one of those really old film projector sound effects and put that on. Because I thought it'd sound ridiculous coming out of a digital monitor.
You know, it's funny that we're very careful not to spoil anything. Like, we didn't even show the monitor hitting Sergeant Johnson in that theater mode, because we didn't want to ruin it, ruin Halo 3 for anybody who hadn't played to the end of Halo 3 by this point.
So we just had him obliterating Master Chief in the chest.
I really want to do the scene where he hits the Arbiter, because the Arbiter like walks around the corner like, "Hey guys, what's going on in this room?" Zap, and the guilty spark just wails on him.
You don't even see him land in frame. He just goes flying out the side of the shot.
He's vaporized.
Awesome.
But this was fun. I mean, this was one of those moments very early on that I knew we were going to write.
Right.
You know, sometimes we build around specific moments.
Like
Church
trying to figure out how to use his laser.
Yeah, and not remembering, turning off his short-term memory. And originally it started off...
This back and forth between Caboose, that's probably one of my favorite moments.
Well, it was a big debate whether to make it longer, because it was cut so fast. It was very long on the paper.
You intended it to be like really like drawn out back and forth thing of like frustrating, but I cut it super fast.
Well, I cut it down from what it was in the episode because I felt like it was 2 pages. Mm-hmm. So that's a lot on paper, but then when we actually cut it together, it was much faster.
Yeah, it was like 15 seconds, I think. One of the there's a lot of running in the upcoming episodes because they're obviously running, trying to get away from the meta, trying to find where his hog is. It's got to be one of my least favorite things to shoot. I don't mind doing all the head bobs and like funny little actions, and driving's great. Just something about shooting people run.
Mm-hmm.
It's difficult.
You know, the action stuff requires a lot more work on the geography side, making sure that you know exactly where people are going to go and what they're going to do.
Yep.
And you can't just do 5 takes of people running because nobody ever runs in the same way.
Yeah.
You know, and you always have to be careful of people bumping into other people. And that was a good example. Simmons going by the camera there was a good example of being able to rewind and set the camera up exactly where you want to.
That was on the limit. I'm so surprised he didn't bump that close.
Yeah, sometimes you get lucky.
Camera. Sometimes you do.
Look, more guys running. They're running into a different room.
I like the sand trap scenes because we got some just great color combinations going on. We got red, gold, I guess, and then the blues.
What I like about this scene in particular is that I like that Sarge, no matter what the scenario is, he always relates it back to the red versus blue battle.
Sarge is the only one who still gives a damn about red versus blue and the fact that the teams are uneven and all that. Everyone else is way past it now.
He just wants to get to the point where it's an even match and then he'll kill them. That's it.
Yeah.
It might even explain why during the Blood Gulch times when it was Tucker and Caboose and Church and they had 5 if you count Lopez on the red side, that they never attacked and killed them. You know, that it's like Sarge like
waiting for
always
things to
knew
become even.
He always knew like this is not fair. It might not count in the record books the right way if we win this.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm really glad that we didn't use the monitor in Reconstruction and we waited as long as we did to use the monitor.
Yeah.
Because it was very tempting to use the monitor right away for something.
We were worried about how the bobbing would look, but it worked out pretty well.
Yeah.
You pretty much just bob it the same way you'd bob a head.
I can go through a lot of characters that initially were going to be the monitor and weren't. The counselor was going to be a monitor. I mean, you can see how the counselor would work really well as a monitor. Mm-hmm. And he was going to be a digital thing that was created by the director. Then the director was going to be the monitor for like the representation of him, you know, instead of the thing on cold storage at the end of Reconstruction. But
I like the way it turned out with Church or Epsilon as he's. I like that shot.
Yeah, that's a good shot.
It's good colors there.
I like them running together. And the weapon of choice for aliens?
The needler. Oddly, for I can't think of a reason why, there's no plasma rifle on Sandtrap.
Really?
Which is why they have the needler. I was going to have them just hold plasma rifles. But you can't get one on Sandtrap. One of those things that you just don't notice.
Our aliens have always used needlers.
Yeah?
Because they're just so, you know...
They're so pink.
And also, do you remember what we used a plasma rifle for? In
the speech unit, season 1.
It's speech unit, yeah. So we established that plasma rifles are speech units.
It'd be funny if a bunch of aliens started attacking Lopez with plasma rifles, and he's like Whoa, there's some speechiness there.
There's a little flare there. The flare on the aliens is actually a silver flare, not a gold flare.
I thought it was blue.
When they get shot. Well, silver blue. It's like that white blue,
Yeah.
Kind of effect. And the other thing that aliens do that's very consistent, they like kneeling on people and beating them in the head.
Yeah.
So this was fun. So did you? I was actually here when you shot that. Did you shoot that as Church was actually flipping that around, or did you have a second monitor doing it?
I had a second monitor because you can't hold an item that close to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Church is literally, casting a shadow on that thing. He's so close. So what I had was there's a monitor to the bottom left of the screen that's just off screen. Who's controlling that crate?
Well, it's good because it allows you to head bob and look around as well without the crate flying around.
Exactly.
Remember we had a discussion fairly early on where I said I'm going to be running a lot of scenes in Sand Trap, and there's going to be rooms, and there's going to be these internal battles, and they'll be walking from room to room, and at one point they lose Caboose, and they got to go find Caboose.
Yeah.
And I suggested, I said, we can always build hallways in Sandbox, which is the map that came out well after Halo 3 was on the market. It's part of the Legendary map pack.
That's right.
And
Well, it's Sandbox is Mythic.
Mythic, thank you.
Yeah.
And we could do that. We could build hallways, and we could substitute those for Sand Trap. But now looking, I don't think we could have done that because those are very orange, and
Right.
Sand Trap is very brown gray.
Sandbox is set at night as well.
Hey, alien.
Well, not for, I'm talking about for the interior stuff. For these interior shots, we could have built interior rooms,
Right, but the lighting of the whole map is a lot darker because it's a nighttime map.
even on the inside.
Mhm.
Yeah, and then this thing is half buried in sand. There's sand inside, which is cool.
Yeah, it's cool.
It definitely allowed us to bury Church at one point, right?
Yeah.
Oh, what's up, brain dude? How you like me now? Bam! Oh, WT, fuck! Why did you do that? I think that's taking advantage of your deity status, dude.
Well, what good is being a god if you can't smite some people? Let's have fun.
The shots came from down here.
Yikes!
Form up, men.
Whoa, incoming.
Good luck, guys. Freeze. Lower your weapons.
So a lot of these later episodes, there's probably the most action in all the season happening at the end.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's there's
How do you feel about action?
Do you, it's hard to say. Like I said before, if you have a lot of action, you're never gonna have better action than you would if you played Halo, right? So Red versus Blue has always been kind of a response to that, where if you look at the first episode of Red versus Blue, it's why are we here? And so the whole thing started as an explanation for why are these guys fighting? Why are they stuck in this canyon fighting over these two worthless bases?
Yeah.
And apparently there's no way in and out of this canyon. This is it. And so it was kind of started as a commentary on multiplayer versus campaign. And why is Master Chief fighting Master Chief, right?
Exactly.
Why is that taking place? It doesn't even really make any sense. Why would Spartans be fighting one another? And so it then sets up as this training exercise, and that's why they're there. So I've always strayed away from it. And if you go back, I mean, it's always been that way. Sometimes we'll get complaints like, they never do anything, this is like, it's, they need to fight. Why don't they ever fight? Why doesn't he just shoot the guy in the head instead of using the sniper rifle as a telescope to look at what he's doing?
Yep.
But we set up from day one. The first thing that's said about the characters is all they ever do is stand around and talk. That's what they were doing that's what they were doing last week. That's what they were doing 5 minutes ago. So 5 minutes from now, when you ask me, what are they doing? They're still just talking, and they're still just standing there. So these are stand around and talk guys.
Mm-hmm.
And occasionally you had to break it up with some fun action. But I like, when we do action, I like it to be funny.
Yeah.
Because in Halo 3, unlike Halo 2 and Halo, we can now have the opportunity to do funny stuff. Like, when they get in a battle, Caboose throws a grenade at the wall. Or Tucker comes in and flies through the air and misses completely.
Yeah, there's a lot of funny moments that are just purely visual based, like action based, which are really funny sometimes.
But we said in this one, there's going to be action in this one, and this is going to be our car chase. And we actually took away a little bit from Reconstruction because there was going to be a bigger car chase in Reconstruction, and we toned that down so that it wouldn't take away from this.
You cut a pretty big action scene at the end of Reconstruction, right? With some dudes fighting each other, and I think originally Omega was going to be jumping from dude to dude, right?
Yeah, we talked about that, where he was setting up the AI to possess different people, and
Like in the middle of a battle, they start turning on each other and stuff like
There's
that.
more. There's more to that, like the AI and what the AI are, like segments of the personality that would affect it. And I mean, I don't think there's people who really follow the storyline that I think would say, yeah, we know, no duh. But we'll cover that, I think, a little bit more in later stuff, or at least I'd like to save it for that. So, it's yeah, but it was a big scene at the end of Reconstruction where the meta was using the AI as basically a weapon, essentially.
Hey guys, sorry about that. Tucker, where did you get that? No, this is my ride. The aliens gave it to me as a gift. Pretty fucking cool.
Did they give you driving lessons too?
No, we kind of skipped that part, but it looks awesome. Ah! Move, you piece of shit!
How do you feel about it?
Yeah, it's nice to occasionally break into some action, as long as it, retains the fact that it's comedy underneath. I think it's fine.
Well, it's nice to use it to introduce things too. Like we were able to introduce a lot of equipment in battles and Reconstruction.
Yeah.
And we were able to, in this episode, use a Phantom and then also introduce Tucker's new vehicle, which is the Chopper.
When you say Phantom, you're talking about the Prowler.
I'm sorry, I keep doing that.
Yeah.
I keep doing that. Yeah, it's the Prowler. I keep calling that the Phantom.
I remember I was shooting the shot of them creeping through the empty. They've lost CT and they're just creeping through, and there's that shot of the alleyway they're creeping by. Joel walked in, and he looked at the screen and what I was doing. He was like, "What the hell is that?"
I've never seen that
and
before.
He'd never seen the Prowler in game before.
Yep. Well, I mean, it's one of those things too where Halo itself has made a shift from the primary villains being the elites to being the brutes.
Right. So
but then when you play in multiplayer, it's mostly brute vehicles, even though you can't be a brute.
Mhm.
There is no Spectre, which is the elite
was the-
Warthog.
Yeah, the Covenant style 4-seater, which is now the Prowler brute style,
So it's
which does have side seats.
which does yes, Gavin. We had a big debate as to whether or not the Prowler had side seats, and in the scenes that we did with that, it was interesting to see elites in brute vehicles.
Yeah.
And there was really no other option. I mean, we could have used a ghost, but we've already established the use of a ghost, so I didn't want to be in this scene. People see the ghost and me thinking donut the entire time.
I remember in the script for the Prowler you wrote weird hover car or something like that, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. Weird. They come out in an alien hover car. Is what I wrote.
What the goddamn is an alien hover car?
Nathan can make it. Nathan and Matt can make it. Also in the original script, which I don't even know if we should say because we had to cut it because it was just we tried to figure out a way to do it, was when Tucker is waiting for CT and CT is charging down on him with the Warthog.
Mm-hmm.
Initially, it was a big swipe of the sword, and it looked like the Warthog passed through Tucker, and then the Warthog continued to drive for about maybe another 30 meters. And then split in half,
like veer in two different directions.
Yeah, and it was gonna be, I even wrote that it had like this red hot arc where he'd cut through it, and,
Like molten.
yeah, right down the middle of it.
I guess now the fact that you've left the director's chair and you've just become the writer, you can write that and be like, right, I'm writing that, I'm walking away. You deal with that.
See you guys. I'm going to drink.
Good luck with that shit.
Have fun. I remember Nathan looked at it. We said, well, what do you think about this, Nathan? Is this something that's possible? And Nathan doesn't really say no. He just went, he like had a frowny look on his face for a long period of time. So that was the Nathan equivalent of no, I realized. But he got us our shot that we wanted to do that we set up well in advance, was that we wanted to have Church fire the big laser, his laser face, and turn
You will
red.
fear my laser face.
He wanted to turn red, and I want to make sure that they could do that before we establish any of that stuff.
Look, guys, we need to keep our head in the game. Let's get back in that temple and close it down for good. Guys?
I think we might have a problem with that.
And then the last scene, sad last scene, with Tucker, or with Donut and Simmons and Lopez encountering Washington. There's a shot in here with the holographic Warthog. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah.
Those jokes were originally written closer together, where Lopez mentions that he could have cloaked the Warthog.
Yeah. And then Simmons bumps into the side of it and it fades into view.
But I love the idea of a cloaked invisible.
Yeah.
You can park it wherever and just hide it, like
Originally-
a security system.
Originally, you were talking about having like just one side of the Warthog painted to look like the wall behind it.
Yeah,
And
that
then
would take a lot more
turns
effort.
and you'd have like the painting like like misalign with the background. That would have been pretty complicated to do, I think.
That would have been very
It
complicated.
would have been funny though.
Imagine if he hits it and he's like, what the hell did I hit? And then the camera shifts left and you see the warthog is painted
Yeah.
to look exactly like the scene behind it.
Yeah.
You know, and that would have been very hard to film. It also wouldn't make sense why Simmons would run into it, because from his perspective, it would have been this oddly painted warthog just sitting there.
Unless that side was painted as well. Painted 4 sides.
And then in that scene, too, we get the nice comeuppance for Lopez where somebody finally understands him, what he says, and it's when he's making a sarcastic comment that makes him sound like an idiot when he's been
He's
right
like,
about every single
of all
thing.
things that they understood, it was the sarcastic, unhelpful comment. So Washington strolls up and caps 2 of the main cast.
Yeah. Yep. So he's most assuredly a villain at this point.
That bullet went straight through Lopez's head.
Did it?
I guess it did. He went down. I mean, Lopez has been blown up to the point where he was just a head. I guess he's like a zombie, where if you destroy the head, there's nothing left of him.
Well, no. I mean, we don't know what's going on with Lopez.
Maybe he'll wake up next season.
Who knows? He's a robot.
He's
you
a
know,
robot.
You can cover stuff from him.
Maybe the bullet doinked.
Not so easy with people though.
No.
And you know, it's
We wanted to establish the fact that Donut was, you know, like critically wounded, so we made sure to show that the bullet passed straight through him, right?
and then some other things as well.
Yeah.
So it was you know, it was a big decision to make Wash a villain. But it's something we've been working on for a very long period of time, is bringing in a guy who knew nothing about the Red versus Blue characters, introducing him to them, and being essentially their shepherd for a while, and then feeling betrayed by them and is now a villain.
It's a nice contrast from like the frustrated dude he was in Reconstruction, trying to get everyone together and, you know, putting up with everyone's bullshit, and now he walks straight back and shoots two characters. It's a nice turnaround.
Not a good way to meet people, though. You know?
No, right?
Hey, how you doing?
not the-
I've heard a
not-
lot about you. Bang.
Not a way to make friends.
All right. Well, that's Red versus Blue Recreation or Recreation. Gavin, congratulations.
Thank
Thought
you
did
very
a
much.
fine job directing.
Thanks for letting a member of your community come and take over.
Well, it's been a long process. We didn't win a contest
No, I
or
know.
anything like that. So.
You've known me for like 7 years now, but
And you directed a lot of our Griffball stuff and a lot of our little miniseries as well. And I thought it was great. I had a lot of fun making it. Like we said, this is the middle story in a trilogy. This one ends on a cliffhanger, whereas Reconstruction was more of a complete story. But this one is definitely intended to lead to other things and bigger things.
And from this point of view, what would you think? What would you expect people to get from the next one?
I think let me put it this way. I think if people liked Reconstruction, I think they will definitely like Resolution.
Right.
Recreation. My thought process here is that Reconstruction was a standalone story after the Blood Gulch Chronicles, that if you just watched that, it would be enough on its own, but it was part of a bigger story. Recreation is also part of the bigger story, but I don't really feel it as being its own standalone story.
Right.
And the reason for that is that I thought if people would stick around for the second story, they will definitely be here for the third one as well. And I think they'll like it.
Good.
This is Bernie Burns.
This is Gavin Free.
Thanks for watching.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, great. Oh, hey guys, what's up?
You said we were going to do the commentary?
Yeah, let's get this going.
Actually, we just finished. We did the whole thing already.
What? Who? We? We're not here. We weren't here.
What the? No, fuck it. Whatever. Let's go get drunk.
No, we've been in every commentary.
Who cares, dude?
Fine.